Hey, welcome to round two, looking at more questions. This has to do with the topic of gender roles, and so on and so forth. So the number one most upvoted question within the topic of gender roles had to do with women priests, believe it or not. So here's the question. How do we know that the fact that there were no women priests in biblical times is prescriptive and not just descriptive of the ancient cultural gender roles? So, great question, number one. For one, I would definitely say that it is, without question, descriptive. There's no doubt about that. But the question is, does it become prescriptive? And I think in following kind of an arc throughout the Bible, it would seem as if, yes, it does become somewhat of a prescription, especially when Paul makes his requirements for an elder and who they are and how they should live and so on. He makes his statement. He says, husbands, they're to be the husbands of one wife. And so when Paul's outlining the idea of leadership for the early church in that particular context, without question, he has male leadership on his mind. If he was thinking in terms of women being part of the eldership or leadership roles, or the actual teaching with authority, the way that we actually taught on that, you can go back and that's a reference to the message that I taught. If that's what Paul had in mind, I think he probably would have used a more gender inclusive word to describe, make sure that's a woman with one husband or a male with one wife. But again, Paul is very specific. One other thing I would throw into that mix is probably the idea of how to form early church leadership was no doubt on the minds of those that were, doing the hard labor, the hard work. They're probably also looking at Jesus's model. How did Jesus organize leadership within the context of his ministry? And Jesus, even though he had many women that were following him and that were part of the actual ministry of what he was doing, had very significant roles, and Jesus was always rehumanizing women that had, for the most part, had a largely dehumanized role within culture at large. Jesus did have 12 actual male apostles. So I think that's probably another thing that was probably taken into consideration, that the priesthood was always exclusively male. Jesus, when organizing the early Jesus movement, was all exclusively male elders, and we're told that later that it was on this the apostles and the prophets that the church was actually built. So that there's a very significant place that the male leaders had in that context, as well as Paul's reference to men being husband of one wife. So hopefully that addresses, or at least maybe answers that question. We'll get on to another one.